Good morning, everybody. Welcome, particularly warm welcome to our visitors here for the first time, because these conjoint meetings between the two academies have proved incredibly fruitful, much more so than we ever expected. We had a wonderful year in 2015, and if we had not got together then and met with the past Secretary General of the UN, Ban Ki-moon, I doubt very much that when it came to September, 1st of September, the redesignation of the Sustainable Development Goals, I doubt very much without that conjoint meeting between the two academies that we would have had forced labor and human trafficking included within the SDGs, and equally, without our combined activity, well, I hope that the social sciences contributed something. When it came to December and the COP21 climate change meeting in Paris, it was far from certain that there would be a Paris Agreement, just as it is now far from certain that the Paris Agreement will be abided by, unfortunately. But those are just two of the most outstanding examples of how our collaboration has been fruitful in practice. And what we are here for, yes, we have a lot of intellectual academic fun and pleasure, but what we're here for is to try and have an effect upon policy, which is why, of course, in certain quarters, we are not particularly popular. But we should rejoice in that. Now, this meeting I want to say very little about. I'm a philosopher of social science, which is not particularly useful to anything except for clarificatory purposes. But I think behind this topic of extinction, we are invoking what Pope Francis called in Laudato Si, integral ecology. Now, as a philosopher of social science, it strikes me as rather strange that this concept has passed from the encyclical to journalism, to sub-journalism, to the media, etc., without much clarification. What does integral mean? What kinds of causal bonds, connections, unintended consequences, aggregate effects stem from the relationship between species, including the human species? That needs a lot of clarification. And extinction is one very important aspect of it. It's also an extremely difficult aspect of it because there's a lot that we do not know about it and cannot know about it. As many of the papers have perfectly sensibly remarked, there are forms of extinction going back through the millennia that have taken place, that have been causally effectual, but we cannot know them. We cannot know them with our present scientific equipment. We can theorize about them, but that's very different from having identified them and located them. And what we are therefore forced to do, and I don't think this is necessarily any bad thing, is to treat that loss, a rather indeterminate loss, as background, and to talk about today, the foreground and what it's foregrounding, the future, and what kinds of integration there are between the different types of species. And what we want to do here, and I'll finish on this, because, as I say, we are here to do something. We have to be of some purpose. And that purpose is, above all, to ensure the future of survival. Surviving and thriving for all species is our ultimate objective. But what is not particularly helpful, I think, is simply to put forward a list of contributory factors. That list could be endless. And what do we do with it? What we need this meeting to conclude with, is a very, very brief statement, but a very pointed statement that is actionable, that can actually guide national, international, regional decision makers in the kinds of policies that in the present state of science and social science we think merit much greater attention in order to preserve a positive integral ecology rather than any of the alternative negative scenarios. So thank you to Pata Dasgupta and Peter Raven for having put together an extraordinarily good program for us. And thank you for listening to a few words. The words have now run out, and we can get into the interesting stuff. Thank you.